Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Veronica. I'm Danielle, as you just said. I'm from Hypable.com, and I'm super excited to be talking to you today about Carve the Mark. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I'm just going to get right into it. One of the most interesting aspects of Carve the Mark that I noticed is the gender role reversal. Can you talk a little bit about what made you not only decide to go in that direction, but also kind of resist the urge to have the characters grow into what other people would call like normal gender roles?
Well, I'm really glad that you asked this. This is not something I thought I would get to talk about, but I'm really excited to.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because it was definitely something I thought about. I mean, I just thought there was something really interesting about affirming that it is like not just okay, but also desirable to be vulnerable and kind of soft-hearted as a more like masculine figure. I think that's a strength, not a weakness. And so it was kind of just a really interesting thing to explore with Akos specifically. And then with Syra, I don't know, she's like a tough chick, and that's like my favorite. I don't know, it's one of my favorite kinds of women to write about. Just she has her vulnerabilities, but she covers them up, I guess, much in a way that we would expect a guy to. She sort of like charges through things instead of trying to soften things for people or trying to maneuver. Like she's no good at politicking. I don't know. So really, I think the decision. Oh, and she ends up like saving him instead of the other way around, which is of course
Oh,
like
yeah, definitely.
significant. But I kind of wanted to explore it just because I wanted to show myself that these kinds of characters are interesting and that there's such a wide variety of different kinds of strength, different kinds of honorable qualities that a person can embody, and they really have nothing to do with that person's gender. So, um, I think I still have like a lot to learn about these things, but it was definitely like a fun thing to explore and really interesting and challenging for me as a writer.
And it was really interesting for me to read. I can definitely say that, just because it's not something that I read very often.
Well,
Um,
great.
and and one of the other things that I really liked about the book is it's Carve the Mark is told from two different perspectives, but it's also told in two different narrative styles, both first person and third person.
Yeah.
What inspired you to tell the story in this way? And I mean, I don't know if you can talk about it, but will this sort of flip in the second book or carry on?
Well, it's kind of, I really feel like I learned how to write this book by writing it all the wrong ways first and then having to delete them. So initially it was first person and it was all Akos, and then that wasn't working because I really needed both perspectives. It's so important to see Syra's culture from Syra's perspective instead of just from an outsider perspective. And so then I had both of them, and they were both first person, and that also wasn't working. I was having trouble connecting to Akos. So was my editor. She was like, maybe you should try this in a different voice just to like see what it does. And when I tried him in third person, a lot of things came together for me because he's described as really guarded and wary, and his current gift is that he kind of repels all other current gifts. Like he is basically like this armored person in a kind of literal and figurative way. And so the third person narration really complemented that in a nice way. It gave this layer of separation, like it's almost like he won't let you in all the way. And I think that's true in so many ways about his character. So that's kind of where the decision came from. And once I wrote it that way, it was like, why didn't I think of this to begin with? This is clearly the right choice for him. As far as Carve the Mark 2, I can't really say.
Fair enough. I wasn't expecting it, but I just thought it was something really interesting.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned wanting Syra, to tell
Yes.
her story about her culture from her point of view. And speaking of the cultures, what was your inspiration for both the Tuve and the Showtech cultures?
Well, there's a lot of like pieces of inspiration that kind of built them. But at their heart, I think the story that I wanted to tell was one that, like, Akos is raised to believe certain things about the Shotet. And then he goes to live among them. And, one person is responsible for the trauma that happens to him, not the entire culture. And as he gets to know them, he finds like a certain affinity with them, and he's capable of experiencing like the real beauty of their culture. And so he's kind of undoing his own assumptions about them, which I think is very much what happens when you're a person who experiences a lot of privilege, like I do, and then you enter into a different world, like a more expansive world. So like when I went to college, I had to change my mind about a lot of stuff because I met a lot of different kinds of people. And I had to like look myself in the eye, so to speak, and be like, this was not so good of you to believe this way. Anyway, so that's kind of like where I started off with the Shotet. But I also wanted to make sure this was a really like two complex societies that are tied together. So they have a kind of common history. And so they resemble each other in a lot of ways. And they're, like Saira's always saying that like siblings in her culture, it's common for them to look different because their blood is mixed. And she comments when her mom meets someone that they must have a common lineage, even though this guy is from a completely different planet. So to have the Shotet be these people who have come from a lot of different places, it makes them, I don't know, like mysterious, and it means that something else is binding them together, like beliefs about the universe and priorities instead of like a common bloodline. So I don't know, it's like, I think I rambled a little bit there, but those are some of the things that kind of factored into like how the cultures were built, and then obviously there were like all kinds of other points of inspiration for more specific things.
Yeah, that's great. And all of those sorts of things were things that I kind of picked up on. So it's nice to hear kind of the thought process behind them. And I know I'm running out of time, but I have one more question for you. If you could kind of summarize Carve the Mark and give an elevator pitch for it, what would it be?
Okay, well, I have a spiel, so I'm going to give it to you.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so Carve the Mark is set in space, and it's about a young man named Akos who is kidnapped along with his brother, and he's taken into an enemy country by the dictator of that country, Rizek. And Rizek's sister, Saira, is someone that Akos meets when he gets there, and she's got enough troubles of her own. And they see an opportunity to help each other, but they're not really sure if they can, or if the differences that have divided their two cultures are too much to overcome.
Wonderful. Perfect.
Great.
Thank you very much for talking to me today. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, you too. Have a good day.